Let's cut to the chase. LeafyIsHere is one of the most influential people in the history of YouTube. Actual celebrities and corporations wish they could have the effect on this site that this nasally shitposting kid had. You could argue that this reptilian fuck was one of the reasons that the demonetization system was introduced, and it can't be understated how drastically content on YouTube changed because of that yellow dollar sign. That's not even mentioning the fact that Leafy practically invented a new genre on YouTube, one that is still around in varying forms to this day. However, influence is not what most people remember him for. No, LeafyIsHere created a very controversial legacy for himself during his short yet prosperous reign, because despite all of his success, someone's legacy is more easily defined by their failures. A YouTuber without a fan base is just some psycho talking to themselves on camera. Even the smallest tubers have one or two fans that they rely on for consistent views and comments. In return, the tuber will typically do something to show their appreciation for those measly few. PewDiePie does the bro fist with his fans, Mr. Breast cures their cancer, and LeafyIsHere acts as a conduit for their hate. Although if you asked Leafy, he would deny that he has any control over what his subscribers do. This attitude represents LeafyIsHere built his channel up on being a personality. Part of the reason he got so popular is because he was always very real with his subscribers. This isn't a bad thing, in fact it's one of the reasons I still kind of admire Leafy, but problems start to arise when you keep in mind the type of personality he had. Combine this down-to-earth, relatable YouTuber with an aggressively edgy sense of humor, and you have the recipe for a cult following. As Leafy grew, the zealous nature of his fans would become apparent to everyone in the YouTube ecosystem. From the hissing epidemic to #NiceShirt, the reptilian army made comment sections their playground for the better part of a year. And what happens when you have an infestation of snakes on a playground? Kids are gonna get bit. Once this started happening, the YouTube community knew that something had to be done about these reptiles, and one iDubbbz had the solution. He figured out that snakes are backstabbers, so using the exact techniques Leafy employed to raise his little army, iDubbbz turned them against him. This seems like a bold claim, but I can personally attest to it. After that content cop dropped, I saw firsthand how me and many others who once watched Leafy crossed him. That's not to give too much credit to iDubbbz either. Leafy's blood was already in the water. He just pointed it out. The most important takeaway is that Leafy's own fans betrayed him. After all, when you inject a mindset of toxicity and bullying into your fan base, loyalty won't be on their mind when you're suddenly the target. Of course, it should be mentioned that a significant percentage of Leafy's fan base continued to support him, but the point stands. Leafy reaped what he sowed. He thought that he was unaccountable for his actions online due to the guise of satire he put on, but it's not always that simple. In fact, there's a rather interesting discussion to be had about how to handle popularity on the internet. How much responsibility falls onto a public figure for what their followers do. You can say that you don't condone something, but at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. So if you're making fun of people in your videos, don't be surprised when viewers go out and do the same. Then again, if we look at an example of another toxic fan base in Filthy Frank, can it really be said that he was at fault for his audience misunderstanding the entire point of his channel? Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but what are failures if not something to learn from? Learning is a part of surviving, and this extends to the YouTube ecosystem. On the internet, success can be extremely fleeting. Just as soon as you make it big, you can fall into obscurity due to the rapidly changing tides of what's trendy. For that reason, when you have an opportunity, it is essential to run with it. Leafy did this for a while, and rode the wave of cringe culture and commentary to the top of YouTube. But once he was there, he grew complacent. This was his In many ways, Leafy got very lucky to be where he was. Not to discount the effort he put in, but it was as if his personality perfectly catered to the 2016 zeitgeist. He was given a golden ticket to YouTube fame, but did nothing with it besides make a shit ton of money. It's like he saw reactionary videos as the tried and true formula to success, and for a time they were. However, those aforementioned tides crept in, and the formula changed. Leafy rested on his laurels, so his content quickly became tired and dated. This mistake was probably the most avoidable out of all of them too. Many YouTubers have capitalized on their initial success from a genre they no longer make content for. A very apt example would be one of Leafy's most similar contemporaries, Pyrocynical. Around the same time Leafy was falling out of grace with YouTube, Pyro was experiencing similar strife from their recent crackdowns on commentary content. The difference is that Pyro started adapting. He slowly phased out the problematic cringe compilation style of video, and for a while moved on to more safe ventures like gameplay highlights. He got away with doing this because he had gained enough popularity where people would just come for him rather than what he was talking about. It went on like this for a while, but once again Pyro wasn't one to be complacent. In late 2017 he released a different style of video than anything he'd done before, and it was very positively received. Since then, Pyro has continued to not only make the same gameplay videos that have always been fruitful, but be willing to hold on to that success by ensuring that his topics and his style remain fresh. At one point in time, Leafy was at the helm of what could be considered the most lucrative channel on YouTube, and it's safe to say that was squandered. Of course, it would be remiss to not mention that Leafy was more forcefully shoved off the platform than Pyro. In Implement's LeafyIsHere documentary, he explains how YouTube shadow banned Leafy's channel. Despite this tampering, I still believe that Leafy had plenty of opportunities to capitalize on his fame before YouTube silenced him. At any point past H3H3's video on him, Leafy could have, well, turned over a new leaf and done away with his problematic content. Regardless of any extraneous circumstances, it was his mistake not to cash in on this prosperity. I've mentioned this before, but the best kind of YouTuber is one who only uploads videos they want to make, and Leafy is another example of why I say that. It seems that in his mind back then, the only reason he was popular was from one certain style of video. But a lot of times, popularity doesn't mean anything. If Leafy was a wiser man in his heyday, he would have used his fame as a catalyst to make videos on things he truly cared about. But by the time he realized this, he was already out the door. Speaking of being out the door, you'd think that YouTube's silent ban on LeafyIsHere would be what forced him in that direction. While it certainly played a factor, Leafy kept uploading for about a year after that took effect, and this was symptomatic of the final mistake Leafy made. That being one of the ways that Leafy found success on YouTube was through daily content. Due to the simple nature of his commentary videos, it was easy for him to play the YouTube metagame, which rewarded consistent uploads. Day after day, month after month, year after year, Leafy pumped out hundreds of videos. So much so that by the time iDubbbz's content cop rolled around, people were understandably tired of his style, and it was ripe to make fun of. However, even after the biggest PR disaster of his career, he didn't stop. It was business as usual. Perhaps at that point he was so engulfed in the YouTube game that he couldn't put down the controller. He didn't know what else to do. Eventually, the money stopped rolling in, and the uploads, for the first time in years, slowed down. He only ever stopped after the community had mostly moved on from him, and his flood of samey commentary videos were no longer garnering him any more success. At that point, he must have realized his time in the limelight was over. So with his pockets full of cash from the years spent working in the YouTube mines, he called it quits. One of the signs of a good YouTuber is not that they can upload consistently, but rather they can upload inconsistently and manage to keep their audience between months of radio silence. Take, for example, Leafy's old foe, iDubbbz, specifically his most acclaimed series, Content Cop. On paper, it's pretty similar to Leafy's content in that they both criticize other YouTubers with jokes mixed in between their points. The difference was, while Leafy pumped out his videos on an assembly line, a Content Cop would only drop every few months or so. More time in the oven obviously meant that Content Cops could be more well thought out than Leafy's boring, reactionary style of criticism. iDubbbz isn't even the best example of this. There's so many great YouTubers that take years between videos, and their fans still sit down and watch the second they're released. Needless to say, the daily grind of uploading 10-minute videos on YouTube isn't exactly the same formula for views it once was. This doesn't just apply to videos either. Sometimes you just need to walk away from whatever you're doing for a bit so you can gather your thoughts and come back with a new perspective. It's something that Leafy almost never did. For him, YouTube had no pause button, so he never really had the time to look around and evaluate that the format had changed, and he was falling behind. By the time he finally stopped to see that his ship was sinking, the water was already waist high. Because of this, when he left, there was no fanfare. Leafy was known as nothing more than an edgy kid who had no chin. His legacy had been tarnished by all his failures, and just as soon as he found success, he found himself disgraced. While he did eventually stop uploading in 2017, that wasn't the last chapter in the book of LeafyIsHere. Leafy may have left disgraced, but after 3 years of contemplation, he returned to show everyone that he could learn from his past failures. In 2020, he capitalized on the opportunity of his biggest foe now being the internet's punching bag and returned to YouTube for one last stint. This time around, we saw a different side of Leafy, one that was willing to stop and upload only when he felt appropriate. This new Leafy knew of the accountability he had over his fanbase, and used it to his advantage. Not to target kids, but to target other, bigger creators whom he had legitimate grievances with. While Leafy was still the unnoble troll he always was, you can't argue that he hadn't matured in some ways. So finally, when YouTube once again kicked him out, this time he left with the respect of the same audience who once shunned him all those years ago. The man who got everything he ever wanted had his version of a happy ending. A common misconception I think a lot of people have is that Leafy is now just some ugly loser troll who literally lives under a bridge. The truth, however, is that he's an ugly troll who lives pretty well off. The amount of money he made from YouTube was no doubt astounding, even if we don't see it. And while Leafy may see that success as a happy ending, his legacy is still forever tarnished by his failures when he was at his peak. Personally, after rewatching a lot of his videos for this project, I gotta say that I liked the content he made both before his fame in 2015 and after his fame in 2020. However, the rapid success he experienced during that fateful year of 2016 consumed him, and it's hard to deny that he was a very despicable person during this time. Even now he's certainly no saint, but at least he's not attacking children, I guess. There's a lot to learn from Leafy's story, but most importantly, I hope you all learn to smash that motherfucking like button, because everyone who does will literally receive in the mail a free Toxapex coaster. That's right, no joke. I am not bullshitting you. You will receive this in the mail. Check your mail after you like this video. Alright, I'll see you guys next time.